So what books did I read over Ramadan? Okay, listen, I know I'm about 2 weeks late, but I finally got around to filming this. So what books did I read during Ramadan? So obviously Ramadan is a time where Muslims start to, well, continue to reconnect and become closer with their religion in the hopes that using Ramadan is one step closer to becoming one with your religion. And also, obviously, we fast. And during this time, you increase your knowledge of Islam. You try to put extra emphasis on that because obviously you want to be doing that throughout the year, not just this 1 month. But you try to put extra emphasis on this month for that. So yes, I read the Quran more. I've got the Oxford English translation right here. That's the one I recommend, the Oxford English translation. Link will be in the description down below, and I think links to all of the books I'm discussing will be in the description down below. So obviously you want to be reading the Quran, you want to be listening to lectures from scholars who want to teach you more about understanding the Quran, because even if you're reading in English, it's not the easiest thing to understand, and scholars' videos help a lot. But also there are other books I read during Ramadan, and I thought, hey, let's talk about them. So let's get into it. So the first book I'm going to talk about, and it's the one that's probably the least Islamic, and actually I might not recommend for Ramadan because I didn't know the subject matter fully until I started reading the book, and I was like, oh, okay, this might not be the best book to be reading this time, but I just sped through it. It was Steppenwolf. I brought it up in a video before. I think I was talking about star ratings in that video. So I read Steppenwolf. I pretty much enjoyed it. Again, I did struggle a little bit with the language because, again, it is a translated book from German, but it's also a book that is, I think, from the 20s. So the language already is going to be difficult in English, but then it's a German book that's been translated. So yeah, the English is a little bit difficult, but the story of finding oneself, the story of how sin affects us, which I guess is kind of relevant to a very religious month, I suppose. It's a very deep, meaningful story for and about the individual, so I would recommend it. Again, it is a bit of a struggle, at least I found it to be, because again, very, or almost 100-year-old language in German that's been translated to English. So yeah, it is difficult, but I think it's a very deep read. I think maybe if you are in a certain mood, it might be better. I think I did read it at, like, most of my reading sessions were like 2 in the morning, so obviously it was kind of like I was in that kind of mood where I wanted to discover some stuff in my brain or something. So that's when I would recommend Steppenwolf. But again, probably not the most Islamic book I read, but there are 2 other books that really fit more with the theme of Ramadan, which we're going to get into. The second book I read, and I'm still reading because it is a more of an academic text of the 3 that I read. It is Women and Gender in Islam. Picture here, link in the description down below. This book is almost a must-read book. It has become, if you're studying not only Islam or theology more so, but also a book that's very important for gender and feminist study. At least that's how it should be read. I think a lot of university professors are using this book more so. I mean, it's I believe from the 80s, so it's a fairly old book, but it's a book that has been put onto a lot of professors' reading lists, not just for theology and Islam, but also for gender studies and for feminist reading that you should be reading. It's a very informative book. Again, as someone who didn't go to university and struggles a bit with reading academic texts, it is taking me a very long time to get through it. I'm also trying my best to also be annotating aspects of the book that I find very interesting or are good, like debating points, because I'm trying to, trying to get that university education myself through books, I suppose. But I recommend it. Maybe if you are more attuned to reading academic works, you might find it easier than I found it to get through this. You probably might fly through it whilst I'm still, making my way through part 2 of the book, where there's 3 parts. It initially starts with the pre-Islamic era of sort of how women were treated primarily in the Egypt/Middle East area. Then it moves on to as Islam was founded and started to grow. And then the third part is the most extensive part, which is sort of how women and gender are treated in Islam sort of now and post the initial big growth in Islam across the world, I suppose, not just the continent but across the world. So a very interesting read, again very academic, so for me I'm struggling a little bit to get through it, simply because I'm, you know, again, didn't go to university, so I'm not the most well versed in reading academic books in like a academic way, I suppose. But if you've got any suggestions, please link them in the comments down below. I would love to find out more. And finally, the third book that I read during Ramadan is Science and Islam. This book is a little bit more something that I found easier to read because it is a slightly more, I don't want to say pop science, but obviously it's a kind of a more pop science-y way of presenting it than Women and Gender in Islam. Women and Gender in Islam is very much an academic text. Science and Islam is a little bit more pop sciencey, a little bit more for the general layperson like myself. It's kind of the way it's presented and the rhetoric it uses and the sort of the flow of it is a little bit more for just a average reader like myself. So it was a little bit easier to get into. Again, very informative. Some of the stuff I kind of knew beforehand, but also I didn't know a lot of the stuff. I believe a friend recommended this book to me a very, very long time ago, and I believe I bought it on my Kindle, and I thought, okay, Ramadan is the perfect time for me to really engross myself in learning more about Islam and the presence Islam had on science, because oftentimes, unfortunately so, Islam is kind of seen as being counter to science, when in actuality, for the majority of its history, it was pro-science. It went hand in hand with science. It was supposed to be a religion that tested you to seek more knowledge, so sort of science. And they kind of address that where it's like, Islam and science isn't the perfect way of describing the words because the way how Arabic works, so it would maybe be the pursuit of knowledge in Islam might be a little bit more apropos for the book, but also obviously science is knowledge, but also there was poetry and other beautiful things that came out of the region and the places of Islam, especially during what we call in Europe the Dark Ages, but it's only Dark Ages in Europe. But I digress. The book goes into that in the first chapter, I believe. I do recommend this one a lot more, especially for the layperson like myself. Again, Women and Gender in Islam is a book I do think should be a must-read, but it is harder, so if you don't want a super hard read, maybe not go for that straight away, but something like Science and Islam is a very easy read. At least I found it far easier. Again, because I'm not the most, higher education academically inclined. So those are the three books I read over Ramadan. Steppenwolf obviously might not be the best book to read for Ramadan 2023, but the other two I highly recommend. You can read it beforehand as well. And thank you for watching. Hey, let me know in the comments what books you read this Ramadan if you fasted, or just regardless what books you read over April. I'd love to know what you read. I'm very interested. I'm starting to get back in the swing of reading again. I took a bit of a break after Ramadan, and also I'm going to get back in the swing of making these videos because I know it's been a few weeks, and I want to bring you some great content. So if you've got book suggestions or video suggestions down below, please let me know. I feel rejuvenated, re-energized almost. I am wearing a thorb, so I feel very free, I suppose. But thank you for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, share the video with a friend or family member, and hey, I hope to see you next Ramadan, regardless of who you are. So thanks for watching.